Well, welcome back to the second session of this program, to this event. Well, we have, the room is not so full like it was this morning, but nonetheless we'll carry on. If there's one word to describe today's event, perhaps that word would be green. And in whatever we do, whether it is connecting to the ends of the world through smart corridors or finance and latest supersonic means of transportation, we must always develop the means that is green and sustainable. In the next session, we have Fred Pierce that will moderate another session, a panel discussing on the efforts that the Wetlands International European Association and other players are doing to preserve the lithium triangle in the Latin American and Andean wetlands. The floor is yours.
En la Puna Argentina, a más de 3.000 metros de altura, con clima árido y zonas desérticas, se pierde gran parte del agua por evaporación. Los humedales altoandinos, con su capacidad de almacenar y regular el agua, son los oasis que mantienen vivo el ecosistema. Estos ambientes, caracterizados por una biodiversidad única, son el sustento de los medios de vida de las comunidades andinas. Los humedales de la Puna están siendo degradados por la acción humana. Aquí se encuentra una de las mayores reservas de litio en salmuera del mundo. La extracción de este mineral de los salares solo podría realizarse tras una evaluación de impacto ambiental adecuada y luego de un cuidadoso análisis de ordenamiento territorial que tenga en cuenta los valores naturales, sociales y culturales de estos ecosistemas que es necesario preservar. Desde Wetlands International estamos trabajando junto a los pobladores y las autoridades locales para implementar mejores prácticas de manejo y restauración de 5 humedales altoandinos. Buscamos garantizar la conservación de la biodiversidad y de los medios de vida de las comunidades. Recuperamos los saberes tradicionales y aportamos nuestro conocimiento técnico para promover un mejor uso del agua. El agua es esencial para la vida. Cuidémosla entre todos.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to the facilitator and thank you for the excellent short video. Welcome to the session on the lithium triangle and the energy transition. My name is Fred Pierce. I'm a UK-based environment correspondent and also consultant to the NGO Wetlands International, who have organised our event today. I apologise for not being present in person. I'm afraid we have a national rail strike here in the UK, which has kept me in London. In this session, we'll be exploring what may well be a new piece of geography for you. It certainly was for me until recently. The Lithium Triangle is a region of the high Andes in South America, straddling a region often known as the Altiplano between Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile. That's the focus of a new global rush for a vital metal suddenly in rapidly growing demand. And that metal is lithium. The session is organised by Wetlands International, and it reflects a growing concern there, and indeed among many other people, about the threat that this mining rush for lithium poses to the salt flats, the biodiversity and the water reserves of this really very fragile and sparsely populated, but still populated region. We're going to hear from speakers about that, but before we hear from our speakers, we want to conduct a brief experiment using a cloud poll. I understand there aren't not many people in the audience, so I hope people online will take part in this, or we'll have a very small poll. But we'd like to test what you understand about lithium and why it is one of the hottest geological commodities today on the planet. William, our technician, has kindly displayed the first question on screen now. You can see it, I think. And we're going to want in reply a single word from you, just one word, to sum up your understanding of what lithium is used for. platform we're using for your answers is Slido, which you may have used before. So to take part, you need to connect on your mobile phone or other device to slido.com, slido.com. And when you've done that, key in the hashtag EDD22, EDD22, to scan the QR code. And then scroll down to the yellow circle, which denotes this room, and click on the session name, the Lithium Triangle. The answer should now appear. The question should now appear. And you have a minute to navigate this and to reply. So you have 60 seconds. I'm going to keep quiet or relatively quiet for 60 seconds from now while you reply. And then we will resume and get to our questioners. So please navigate Slido and give us your one-word answer. For any of you, if you still need the instructions, you go to Slido, slido.com, then hashtag EDD22 to scan the QR code, and then find the yellow circle for the room and click on to the Lithium Triangle and give us one word. And then we'll see a word cloud of your responses. And after that, we will get to hear from our speakers. You have about 15 seconds left. Okay, William, I think we can end the voting now, and we have the result on screen. And I think it is really very clear that batteries are what we're talking about. You figured it out. The energy storage medium of choice for the mobile phone devices that you just voted on, but they're pretty small, so more especially for storing the electricity needed to run electric vehicles. That's what's really driving this. Videos, after all, are a lot bigger than phones. Vehicles are a lot bigger than phones. So with demand for electric vehicles rising exponentially as the go-to technology for low-carbon land transportation, lithium demand is soaring at an extraordinary rate. So that raises an obvious question, which we're going to address, both specifically to the lithium triangle, but also more generally. Could the demand for lithium and other materials seen as essential for the great green energy transition that we all want to come about, could this demand become a new means of wrecking the planet? If you want to be tabloid about it, can green be bad? So the people of the high Andes are starting to fear this. They fear that they and the wetland ecosystems on which they rely for their pastures, for their water supplies, and for much else may be sacrificed as we in Europe and elsewhere want to drive green vehicles. For at present, and this is a really scary statistic, at present more than 2/3 of the lithium reserves known, there may be others, but known around the world today, are dissolved in the briny water that lies beneath the land within the lithium triangle. Román will tell us more about that in a minute. But Europe is a big manufacturer of cars, and has a fast rising demand for electric vehicles and, of course, the batteries that power them. But the EU is not a lithium producer. So we have to get it from elsewhere. The European Commission estimates that demand for the metal will grow by a staggering 18 times by 2030 and 60 times by 2050. So the obvious question is, can this be done in a clean way to avoid ecological disaster and livelihood loss? More widely, we need to ask, can the energy transition be accomplished in a way that protects key ecosystems like the lithium triangle and, of course, the people who rely on them? The fate of the high Andes and its wetlands is rapidly shaping up, I think, to be a test case in this. And as a journalist, I learned about this relatively recently, but I shall certainly be writing about it. Now, we have two speakers to address these issues. One from Wetlands International in South America, who will outline the situation in the Lithium Triangle. And the second will address more general issues around the green energy transition and how we can make it both just and clean. And after that, I hope we'll have a little time for questions. And if you have any as we go along, please submit them using the same Slido pathway as we used for the polls. So I hope that will be self-evident as you go along. So our first speaker is Román Baigún from Wetlands International in Latin America. He's a manager of its program for saving high Andean wetlands for people and nature, a program which began looking at agricultural issues and sustainable land use, but has now moved into the issue of mining. And it aims, of course, to improve the conservation status of the region's threatened wetlands and their biodiversity, and of course their endangered species, and to enhance the well-being of local communities in the face of this emerging lithium rush. So Román, what are the issues and how can they be addressed? I think you have roughly 8 minutes, but we're doing well for time, so take what you need. Román.
Okay, thank you, Fred. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to share with you our concerns about the impact of lithium mining that is imposed to the high Andean wetlands. I'd like to add that ours is a program led by Wetlands International in partnership with ECOAN, FARN, and Shuchan, and supported by DOB Ecology. We agree that in the context of climatic change, we need to convert to cleaner technologies. For this, it is necessary to accumulate the pulses of renewable sources of energy by efficient batteries, and this is where lithium takes an important part. If you please pass the next slide, Leah. Thank you. So, the Lithium Triangle that you're seeing on screen comprehends all lakes in Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile, as Fred said. And approximately from 58 to 80% of the reserves of lithium in the world are found under these wetlands. Just Chile and Argentina have 49 and 10% of the reserves of the world, respectively. The next slide, please. So high Andean wetlands are located over 3,000 meters above the sea level along the Andean range in South America. The groundwater is originated from rainfall, snow, on the right of the screen, and the primary water comes from that area, and that's the water that controls the environment and supports wildlife. So this water goes below the salt flats, where lithium and other minerals are naturally concentrated in the brine, which you can see in the left of the figure. But this is surrounded by fresh water stored underground also. So when brine is extracted to obtain the lithium, the fresh water moves towards the center of the basin, getting salty. So high Andean wetlands are crucial in the region, both in ecological and economical terms. These bofedales, vegas, or pit bogs, are highly productive ecosystems, sources of pasture, food, and fuel for local communities, as they store and regulate water flows. In the high Andes, where precipitations might only reach 50 to 400 millimeters per year, there's no doubt that these are oases for biodiversity and the communities. We can also say that these wetlands are globally important too, because they capture an enormous amount of carbon, and they also liberate oxygen through extremophile bacteria. So these wetlands are biodiversity hotspots that include the vulnerable Andean flamingos and other endemic bird species, the native wild camelids, and represent an invaluable heritage to ancient cultures. Now, lithium has been used for a long time in making glass, medicines, and lubricants, But as you said, in the last year, there was a huge increase in extraction due to their interest in rechargeable lithium batteries for laptops, cell phones, and other portables. But today, as again, the highest demand is for electric cars and accumulators, making it a strategic mineral. In this way, the price of a ton of battery-grade lithium carbonate rose from $9,000 US in 2021 to $80,000 US in 2022. So as a consequence, the number of mining companies, for example, in Catamarca province in Argentina, multiplied from 7 in 2017 to 20 in 2021. Lithium production more than doubled in the world between 2016 and 2020, up from 40,000 tons to 86,300 tons per year. But this has an impact. And lithium mining in the Andes is a water-intensive industry, which uses more water than the system is capable of replenishing, as water deposits are even centuries old. When brine is pumped out and concentrated in pools, billions of liters of water are evaporated, never to return to this system. All this in the context of the certification of the high Andes, derived from climatic change. Please, the next slide. So companies exploiting lithium in the Andes apply the most basic technology available, the evaporation pools, with minimal care for the environment. These pools occupy large areas, modifying the natural landscape. And for example, in Salar de Atacama in Chile, these pools represent the equivalent of 7,500 football fields. In Jujuy province in Argentina, the equivalent of 450 fields. This is in a very early stage. These pools mean the evaporation of billions of liters of water in an extremely arid zone, reaching 1.9 million liters of water to produce a ton of lithium carbonate. In Argentina, local governments' capacities to regulate, control mining activities are weak, with efficient measures to take care of this fragile environment. On the other hand, businesses' practices are not in line with the due diligence required, externalizing the cost of their environmental liabilities. And the main impacts documented from mining companies are the following: alteration of natural surface water flow and water balance, dry wetlands, salinization of soils, wetlands, and underground freshwater reserves, even the authorization of mining in a Ramsar site in Argentina, harm to wildlife. And if you pass the next slide, please. 90% increase in acidity of soils, risk of breaks in the evaporation pools, environmental liabilities for soil pollution, and unacceptable disposable operations. These come carbon emissions, and local communities are ignored or oppressed, even oppressed. And under the current economic crisis, lithium mining might be seen as a quick way of overcoming it, but this activity is also advancing over local communities and indigenous people's rights, including over the demand for free, prior, and informed consent, their autodetermination, and their access to for them and their animals to water. So lithium mining under the brine modality not only disrespects local communities, but destroying wetlands increases carbon emissions, which goes against the very concept of energy transition to cope with climatic change. So in our program, we propose that lithium mining be strictly bound to social and environmental standards that guarantee the care of high Andean wetlands and the citizens' rights to be involved in the process. In a nutshell, we are here for the energy transition. We are not against lithium mining per se, but we encourage purchasing countries to be responsible for the social and environmental aspects of lithium mining and the impact this methodology causes. And we urge to go for technologies that do not have such an impact over the environment. And the last slide, please. Thank you very much for the moment.
Román, thank you very much. That was really very interesting. You make a very persuasive and a scary case for why lithium mining in this region often remote from effective accountability is so dangerous for people and nature. Now, some people would say, well, you should be campaigning for a total ban. You're an environmentalist, just say no. But you don't quite say that. And I'm interested to explore just a bit further why you say that. Do you feel that there are technologies that could do a better job than the ones currently being proposed there? Do you think that the regulation of local authorities could control the companies moving in there? Where does your confidence lie that we could perhaps, take control of this new industry?
Well, yes, thank you for asking, because we are for the changes in technology that will take us away from climatic change, of course. And we understand that lithium is a necessary mineral for this stage, at least. But we have no history in controlling these mining companies dealing with wetlands. The laws are very old and do not specify on environmental impact assessment necessary for this particular environment. And we are trustful that this can be changed and companies can invest in better practices, in better solutions for extracting the minerals. But unfortunately, this is a very, very successful business, and we see nothing on that side. It has large revenues, but little investment in this research. So yes, we understand it must be necessary to obtain the lithium.
Okay, understood. Do you, you mentioned indigenous communities and land rights, and you talk generally about the rights of citizens to be informed and involved in the process. But for you, there is a land rights agenda based around free, prior, and informed consent, and you mentioned that. Is that a kind of bottom line? Is that, if you like, where the no should be applicable? If the local communities are simply opposed, should their right to control their lands take precedence over the global need for lithium?
Absolutely. We are for the autodetermination of indigenous communities. We see no way of overpassing the rights. Many communities, indigenous communities, have already stood up against the mining activities in their territories. So we know that these consultations must be done in a proper way, the way they are used to have the consultations, and with the timing and with the support they need to understand all the impacts that this activity might pose.
Okay, so if they said no, you would stand with them?
Of course, we are for the laws. This is something which is already in Argentina and Bolivia and in Chile legislation. So that has to be respected.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. We may return to some of these issues later, but thank you for the moment, Román.
Thanks to you.
That's the specifics of what's happening in the high Andes, and it's important, to place this, as we've started to do in the context of global efforts to transition our energy systems to fight climate change while also protecting nature and human well-being. So our second speaker is Ernesto Feilbogen from the German development agency GIZ. He's a chemical engineer by training. For the most of the past decade, he's been working from Latin America, I think specifically from Mexico, coordinating the agency's sustainable energy program. So he has a sharp appreciation of how to manage what we're looking for here, a just, clean and green energy transition, and to do it in that region. So Ernesto, please give us your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fred. And I must confess, Ramon, it was a very, very clear and interesting presentation, the one you did. I must mention, I was born in San Salvador de Jujuy, so I feel myself as part of this situation. If the presentation is ready, we can start with some slides. I'm working for the German Agency for Technical Cooperation, that is the GIZ. and we are one of the 7 implementing agency, part of the Euroclima program. Euroclima, you can see in the slide, is a program that is financed by the European Union, as well as co-financed by the German government, French and Spanish government. And we work in Latin America in 18 countries, and it's gonna be a new phase, broader the activities in more countries. As I mentioned, 7 agencies are working there. The objective is strengthen the national policies, achievement of international commitment, knowledge and action toward decarbonization, climate resilience, and the protection of biodiversity. We do work in a process, we follow a process that is called Diálogo País. That means that we respond to some requests from the beneficiary countries, and we analyze the request and provide technical assistance to support local agendas in the way, of course, to contribute to the NDC in every country. Now that we know where we are, let me make a zooming out, because we are very much focused in one aspect, that is, of course, the lithium production in the Andeans. And if we go a little bit out of the situation, we'll see lithium is very much related with batteries. Batteries is related with electromobility. Electromobility is a strategy that has emerged in the world, and the idea is to reduce or eliminate the consumption of fossil fuels, and this is a means to decarbonize the economy. There are other strategies going around, not only the electrification of the transport, but also electrification of the industry, electrification in many other sectors. Electromobility is also one arm, one leg, we can find the world of the energy transition, that even though it was started 15 years ago with some goals related specifically with renewable energy, to integrate more renewable energy in the generation matrix and energy efficiency, little by little was expanding the approach, and of course addressing some subsectors that are energo-intensive, that they consume a lot of energy. The transport is one of them, of course, the industry, etc. And now there are new players that are being invited to be part of this energy transition, that are cities. Local government has a very interesting role that they can play, because there are a lot of energy that is consumed in cities related with lighting, heating, urban mobility, and water management as well. But the description will not be good enough if we do not introduce hydrogen. Hydrogen is a new energy vector that is, well, not so new, but is with a lot of initiatives all over the world, a lot of money that support, and will in a way compete with electromobility only in some niches, because there are others that are definitely for electromobility, and where hydrogen perhaps will not have any role. But what has this to do with the people that are working, living, and have this facing these problems in Los Salares, as Román mentioned? Well, there is a link that we need, and I want to strengthen, that is synergies and coordinating effort. Román already mentioned something about this. If we understand that we are in a climate emergency, the climate emergency is because of the impact we are producing in terms of the warming, the warming of the planet, that is now considered 0.2 degrees every decade, and it is an emergency. And the energy sector is responsible of close to 75% of greenhouse gas emissions. That means we need to do urgently something. Is why every year you will see the ambitions, the goal are bigger and bigger. Now we are talking about net zero, decarbonizing the system. So we are with more ambitious, but the pathway is not really very clear, but we are moving there. We can say that the carbon budget will be, that we still have, that we can produce, will be exhausted in 17 years if we want to keep the limit of 1.5 degrees, 1.5, 2 degrees, that are the limits that we ourselves impose because of the impact that will create. But why I describe this panorama? because we do understand that those are like layers that belong to the one system, and they are moving all together, not necessarily with the correct interlink, connection, and synergies, and sometimes do not go with the proper direction they should in terms of sustainability. This is the case, for example, of the lithium. Then what to do? Energy transition need to do a lot of things and need to put efforts in those measures that can have very big impact. This is the case of electromobility. It is considered one of the sectors that with some effort, we can get a lot of good results. Now we can move to another slide, please. And we need to recognize that energy transition is not one process. Every country is a case-by-case analysis and has its right to design the process. The goal seems to be very close one with the other. The process may differ and the timing may differ. There is a very interesting report of the International Energy Agency, the World Energy Outlook 2020 and the Net Zero 2050, that says which would be the scenarios if we go from the sustainable development scenarios to net zero scenario, stronger, more ambitious. You see that the graph shows how need to be reduced different fuels, need different consumptions in order to be there close to the 1.5, and figures are very big. Is it possible to get a 90% reduction, 76% reduction, 56% reduction, meanwhile increase renewable in such an amount as the graphic says? It's difficult to say that we are there, so it is needed to continue with the effort and put more emphasis there. But now let's please go to the next slide, because it is the major point we are addressing. This is from the Oxford Institute of Energy Studies and try to show which are the alternatives for transport. Of course, electromobility take a very important role, as well as hydrogen, but still, other fuels, internal combustion engines will be there, even though we read in the papers and in many communications that big car manufacturers are putting a limit 2035. Many countries, many manufacturers says we will stop producing those cars. But we'll be there. Still, we will have to live with this situation. Then if we go to the next slide, please. We see an example of Finland scenario modeling framework. Why I did want to put this? Because it's a very good example of the wide energy sector. They are in many countries, not only in Finland. We are dealing with the energy sector is not only the production, transportation, distribution, and consumption of energy, but it's very much related with other sectors, subsectors, and we need to work together. Those layers need to be interconnected, related. Why? Because there are synergy opportunities. Román mentioned, is this a black-white situation, or we can find a way in the middle as to promote the development as long as it is sustainable development? Do we have technological opportunities with ultrafiltration, membrane filtration? There is an interesting project in Universidad de Buenos Aires, electrochemical project. What about recovering the evaporation, or what about imposing rates of production? Meanwhile, we gain space, we gain timing with new technology. Why don't we make companies part of the solution as well as part of the problem? But this can be done only with a big table, need a governance that is including all the voices. The governance should be there, and it's not easy. It's not easy, but need to be constructed in order to understand the problem. We need to move together, and if possible, to the same direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ernesto. That was fascinating. I just want to ask briefly, it seems like governance is a big issue here. So Román is talking about the need for better regulation and control and oversight and so on, and you're talking about how governance can deliver the kind of global needs that we have. Your experience of many years in Latin America, I mean, what does that tell you about the ability of governments in the region. I mean, they have issues all around the world. It's not exclusive to that region, but governments in the region to manage big projects of this sort in remote regions with relatively small populations. Do you have confidence that that can be done, or is that something which worries you?
Well, we need to be confident because the process is running, the process will continue, and we can assist local government, federal government, trying to provide methodology, trying to provide technical assistance. It's not an easy process to establish a good governance methodology because it will include a table that will be growing with more participants. We need to learn each other. We need to understand other voices. And there are methodologies for these purposes. Normally, at the very beginning, every sector is kind of very close. They work on silos. They are not open to understand. It seems like it is a fighting again. What is possible, what is not possible. I read a sentence that says, we do not want to stop the process because it is a quite good enough process and we are not going to go to the best process. It's a kind of not the best answer. We need to get to go to a process that everybody can accept because everybody is part of the process. We can get the good impacts as well as the bad impact. Governance require methodology, require open spaces, require that everybody has an opportunity to express their constraints, their problems, and that we address those problems and trying to find solutions.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to come to some more questions for both of you in a couple of minutes, but first we need to launch the second poll question. William, can you put the second question on screen? That would be good. Okay, that's how you join. The question is going to be, how can we reconcile the need for natural resources for the green energy transition with the preservation of the environment and the rights of local communities in the high Andean wetlands in particular? Now, rather than the one-word answer as we had before, this time we ask you to choose one of 4 options as your preferred approach, and I, at any rate, can see those on the screen now. So please go back to slido.com, or you can choose one of those options there. I'm afraid it will have to be only one, even though you may have sympathy with many of them. So just to repeat, you go to slido.com, you key in hashtag EDD22, scroll down to the yellow circle and click on the session name, and you should see the question and choice of 4 answers there. And again, you have 60 seconds to read them and to make your choice, and I'll be back with, I hope, some answers in 60 seconds. For any of you not participating, you can probably see the choices on screen, but I'll go through them. These are choices for reconciling the need for lithium while protecting the environment and community rights. And the options we're given are by supporting investment in wetland conservation and restoration. Second, by promoting land and resource rights for local communities. Third, by encouraging state authorities to take more proactive roles in environment and social regulation. And fourthly, perhaps by pressuring businesses through consumer and NGO advocacy to be more socially and environmentally responsible. No doubt we'll need many of them all together, but which one do you think should have priority? You have about 10 seconds to finish answering. Okay, the minute's up. So, William, if you can end the polling and give us some results. And I see that number 1 seems to do best. Supporting investment in wetland conservation and restoration. That will be a joy to the environmental conservationists among us. Perhaps less so to some of the people taking a more political approach to these things, but that's very. The other 3 appear to be more or less neck and neck. So that's very interesting, supporting investment. Román, I don't know, I seem to remember having a conversation with you in which you said you weren't so sure that that was the route in this particular place. So if you would like to comment on the result of the poll, I would be very interested to hear what you have to say.
Oh, thank you. Well, what I say is that the government is partnership with the companies. So it is difficult for them to be very strict, to pass new laws that will, at this stage, maybe discourage some companies to settle in the provinces. And at the same time, of course, we need support to take care of this environment, all the support the first world can provide. I'd like to remind you that restoration after these areas have been destroyed, it's not an option. So it's not like, okay, let's do it now and wait until we find a way to restore it. Because once fresh water is it's salted, nothing can be done. And after the peatlands have been destroyed, it is very difficult to come back to a good state.
So the rainfall that is still supplies water to the region, it's not up to the task of simply it would dilute the brine a bit, but you couldn't get back to having freshwater ecosystems anywhere on the land. Is that right?
No, by that moment, many populations, avian or wildlife, it will be completely eradicated. And of course, for a family to have no more fresh water, it means that they have to immediately move away. So there's no time there to spare.
Okay, and before I come to Ernesto, I'd just like to follow up on that, because the original question I had for you at this point was to ask you what your worst fear was. What do you fear if things go wrong? What's the worst that could happen? Is it a depopulated landscape?
Well, people, it's already under the poverty lines in many of these landscapes. And so they may want to accept a little job in one of these mining companies because they have no other options, which is part of the pressure we are suffering today. And this means that it seems that they're not against the destruction of this environment, but it's actually the lack of opportunities. And then we have species which are very vulnerable. As I mentioned, the Andean flamingo. We have endangered species that they're suffering already with the climate change. So there you have extinction as a possibility. And well, it's a cliche, but once you are extinct, there's no way back.
True enough. Ernesto, you mentioned hydrogen briefly in there, as if maybe the current fixation on lithium to provide batteries for electric vehicles might be a suboptimum route, or at any rate only one route to low emissions vehicles. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about what your take is on that. Are we getting too obsessed by batteries and lithium?
Well, I would say in general terms that when we promote, for example, energy efficiency, we say behind energy efficiency, there is a business. And we don't feel ashamed that there is a business, because thanks that there is a business behind energy efficiency, it makes it sustainable. Mm-hmm. The problem is not itself a business, but the business model you install. So is there an opportunity to manage the risk behind the lithium exploitation in such a way that we can still provide a development opportunity for the region? Of course, not if we do follow the situation that Ramon is explaining. Things are going bad right now, but we need to move to prevent what may be worse in the short future. Because let's put another scenario. Let's say by hydrogen, let's say by battery recycling or by battery reuse, may be the case that the demand of batteries going down, or when they appear of a new technology, and then the business opportunity behind lithium may disappear. It's not going to happen in a very short or middle term, but then we will have the feeling that we lost an opportunity even for the gaining of the people that are living there. I know the region, I know the area, I know Salinas Grande, many times visiting friends, colleagues living there. And it's a situation that we will feel bad if we do not have the innovation in the way of establishing a proper business model. It's not so easy. It's easy to talk about this, but it's a starting point. We need to talk, to exchange, and to find a better situation.
Okay, Román, do you have any thoughts about on the technology side? I think you mentioned better methods of mining. As could you tell us we don't have much time left, but if you could tell us a little more about that.
Well, I'm not a specialist in that area. I'm a biologist, but I know that there are, as Ernesto mentioned, other technologies that do not need to evaporate the brine in these huge pools. But they can be reinjecting the water after taking the lithium from the brine. But again, we don't see an experimental side in the companies to develop these technologies in let's say, commercial scale. Yes, we know that the Buenos Aires University have patented one of these methods, but that needs to be taken into a industrial scale and be proved, because we don't know. That's one of the biggest problems for these wetlands. There's not a good baseline for many of the variables.
Okay, we have a couple of questions that have come in. I would like to ask William if he can put those on screen. We can have a quick look at them. Is that possible? If not, I'm very happy to carry on with my own question. We have a couple here, yes? Which I'm having trouble reading on my screen, I must admit. Okay, we have one here. What can the EU do in order to move towards more sustainable lithium mining in order to meet the high demands that are presented in the introduction? Román, you mentioned companies could do more. What could the EU do? How could the EU? There must be EU companies involved here. How can the EU push this agenda forward? Román, and I'll ask Ernesto as well, but if you can be very brief.
Okay. Well, you can witness the negotiations between the local inhabitants and the companies. You will see they're below standard, and that could be improved. So you can have a witness there. You can talk with the government. You can, let's say, be sure that whatever is certified, it's not just a stamp.
Can you set rules? Can you say we will not import the lithium unless these standards are met? Is that something which might be on the agenda?
I think we have to go together there, not just setting very strict rules, but just to help with the expertise in other areas to bring it here to have to work together with the government and the companies.
Thank you, Ernesto. What are your thoughts here?
I would say there are already many programs related with sustainable supply chain that are imposing some kind of restriction in different markets related with what every market can buy, as long as you can prove that the supply chain is responsible, is sustainable. Of course, I'm not talking on behalf of European Union. I'm not authorized to do this, but I mean, I've seen that in many different markets that happen. But the second question make me think about many examples. I do remember, let's say 20 years ago, when this Producción Más Limpia, that was the kind of new approach related of what are industry doing with the environment? Are they putting anything they want to put in the environment? And then a very interesting process was starting, asking companies, you need to invest in the treatment of your effluent if you don't want to be punished, but we can make a deal. I'm not going to stop your production as long as you prove you are investing there. This is the case. They can invest in this jump from laboratory to industrial state that new technology needs in order to prove that they have the willing to improve also the sustainability.
All right, we have to stop there. We're out of time. We're about a minute over, so I'm going to thank you both for your excellent contributions. I won't try and sum up. There's no time for that, even if I could do it. But so thank you, Román. Thank you, Ernesto. And thank you to however many people were out there. Thank you.
Thanks to you. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you next time.
Thank you so much, Fred. Thank you. I've definitely learned one or two things about lithium batteries. And before the next session, we have 10 minutes, and we'll be having still something on a topic on green and safe mobility, which will be moderated by Judith. Please stay around for this next session, which is promising to be very interesting. Thank you very much.